Hey everybody, Dave from Carolina Lithium, and we're here getting ready to do part 3 on our series on resetting the neck on this old Martin. This should be our final video. What we have here is a 1966 Martin D28. Came in here with a bad need of a neck reset. Action was very high, didn't have a whole lot of saddle sticking out. So we've already took our neck out, recut the angle, got it glued back in, still have clamps on it. The glue hasn't fully cured yet. And that's one of the things a lot of people criticize liquid hide glue as opposed to traditional hot hide glue, which has to be melted in a pot because they don't know how to use it. Liquid hide glue is the same thing, just dissolved in acid rather than heated in a pot to melt it. And the exact ratio of how much that acid it varies from one batch to another. Although the bottle instructions say that it sets and cures in 24 hours, it really takes a little bit longer than that, and sometimes as long as a week. So anything that's really critical, they have a lot of tension on, like a neck or an acoustic guitar bridge, I'll let it sit for a week with clamps on it before I take it off, and I have not had any problems with it, not anything come back that it's come loose. But if you just let it sit overnight, this won't hold. So we're going to use clamps on here for a couple more days. It's Friday now. I put these clamps on Monday, so a few more days before these will come off. So while we're waiting on that, I'm going to go ahead and do this pickguard. This has nothing to do with the neck reset, but it's a common issue with all Martins of this era, so we're going to go ahead and show that repair. And I already removed the old pickguard. I was going to show that, but I want to just see how tight it was, and it just kind of popped right off. So here is our old pickguard. And the problem with these is the vinyl that they made these shrinks over time. They're glued directly to the wood with no finish, very strong bond. And this shrinks, it kind of curls up on the end, pushes down in the middle. It can actually put enough pressure on the top that causes a crack. That's why you see a lot of Martins, including this one, this era, the edges of the pickguard will be curled up a little bit. It'll be a small crack. Sometimes referred to as the B string crack, because it usually goes right under the B string. That's pretty much where this one is. And like I said, that happened with just about all Martins of this era. So, if that crack had already started, I decided we'll pull this pickguard off and we'll replace it. And it's an amazing amount of tension that this can actually put on the top. You can actually visibly see this thing shrink overnight when I pull it off the next day. It's actually, if I lay this back on top, I can actually see a slight gap around it where it's actually visibly shrunk if I pull it off. And we can here, this is one I took off about a year ago off of the D18. See how drastically that has changed over time. We have our new pickguard here. Sometimes you have to trim these a little bit to get them to fit the shape exactly. This is actually fits pretty good, so I don't even trim this any. And I buy these with adhesive on the back where you can add adhesive to them. But first thing we got to do is we're going to have to pump some glue into this crack. Now somebody had tried to glue the edge of the pickguard down where the crack was and got a little bit of glue into that crack. But I don't think they've got it down deep. So we're going to go ahead and pump some glue into this to stabilize this crack. And a lot of times when there's a crack in the top, I'll just glue a cleat underneath the top to help reinforce it. There's no need for these cracks right here at this location because we have two braces running pretty much right there as well as the bridge plate. So this crack has nowhere to travel. You just want to stabilize it. Largely for the sake of tone, because the crack can hurt the sound. And go ahead and replace this pickguard because it's only going to get worse, and they can cause cracks in other spots around the pickguard. I've seen them cause cracks further down as well. So we'll go ahead and, first thing we'll do, we'll get our glue, and we'll pump a little bit of glue into this crack just to kind of stabilize it. When I glue a crack in the top of the guitar, I typically like to use Tight Bond, the light color, to match the color of the spruce pretty well, and this is strong stuff. And this is not something you want to take back apart. You just want a strong bond. You don't care about having to remelt it later on, like you would, like the glue you often use high glue. What we're going to do is we're going to take just a wet rag here. We're going to wet this spot and clean it. And it just cleans it and also has some water because this glue dissolves in water before it cures. It'll help to thin it, help to get down into that crack a little bit further. After that, we're just going to put a drop of glue directly over the crack. And there's still a little bit of water there, a puddle of water, so it'll clean it out. Take our air hose. We have a tip with a suction cup on it. We push this down on the top. Clean this whole glue off of it. And the glue and the air will have nowhere to go except down through the crack. It'll carry the glue with it. And it'll help get it down deep into the crack, into the fibers of the wood, better than if you had just set it on there. Wipe off the excess. And I might do this a couple times just to make sure I get plenty down in there. This is a larger crack. I would multiple times all the way down it. Important, don't use too much air pressure on the blow outside with the suction cup and then what you do. Wipe off the excess. And it should be good. Okay, now we've got our crack glued. That will cure and still dry in an hour before it's cured in a day or so. You need to seal the wood under where the pickguard was. These old pickguards are glued directly to bare wood. But the modern adhesive that we're using here does better to seal finished wood, because modern guitar builders usually apply this after the finish is done. So we don't need to build up coats of lacquer and do this and refinish the top. You need to just put a little bit of something on here to seal this. And quick and easy way to do that is super glue. So we're actually going to take a little drop of glue on a Q-tip, and we'll seal this whole thing. Be very careful not to get any on the finish because it dries almost quickly. As usual, my preferred super glue or CA glue is Zap-A-Gap. So saturate this Q-tip with some glue. And very carefully kind of brush it on. Alright, now we got the wood cleaned off and sealed. Also, just do our pickguard now. Now, what I'm using here is tortoloid pickguard. It's supposed to be about as close as you can get to the old tortoise shell. You can buy these from Steve Mack and a couple other places. You can get it in a blank sheet or pre-cut like this with this 3-in adhesive on the back of it. And well, I like to do this, so I like to get this thing positioned exactly where I want it. And put a little piece of tape on it, kind of act as a hinge. Pull it back, feel it backing off, then press it down. So you only get one shot at it with this adhesive. You can't move it around, slide it, and peel it back off. It won't do right. You get one shot at it. Lined up where it covers up all of the empty space, all the space that is no finish. green and the purple. That's pretty much the perfect spot. We'll take a little piece of painter's tape, stick it on my shirt a few times, the old guitar, and I'm going to peel up any finish. Exactly where I want it. Tape acts as a hinge. Put it up like that. And push it right back down around the way. Peel it back and off. Go. Now, one more thing I like to do with these vintage guitars like this, you have a very shiny, brand new pickguard. Doesn't really match the patina on the guitar. So what I like to do is I like to take just a blending pad and softly scuff it up, kind of the angle that a hand would be hitting with the pick. Kind of gives the illusion of decades of pick wear. That dulls the surface down a little bit, and it matches the guitar and doesn't look like this pickguard does. Very, very light. A little heavier where your hand is actually being and less here, kind of trying to replicate that. And it looks like the original Mortis pickguard. Alright, now we'll let this sit for another day or two, and we'll take the clamps off and we'll do a final setup. Okay, got our clamps off. Everything looks good, everything like it's held together good. And now we got to replace this fret here. Now we can see here, the hole I drilled for my heat stick is just a little bit bigger than the fret. So it will be visible. So what we're going to have to do is we have to plug this hole with some glue and some ebony dust. And then that combined with the fret covering it will hide it, and you won't be able to tell if this hole is ever drilled unless you pull this fret back out. And then that'll hide that the neck reset has ever been done. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, plug this hole. We can't just pour sawdust down this hole, because remember this drill went all the way down to the bottom of the heel. So that take a lot of sawdust to fill that hole. Plus it's an empty cavity in there. Not just the hole that I drilled through. What we'll do is we'll stuff just a couple little slivers of sawdust. Well, not sawdust, but a couple little slivers of mahogany. Comes from cutting something with a chisel. And just kind of stuff that down in there. to block off most of the hole. Punch. Fill the hole with some sawdust, ebony dust. I just took an old violin peg and sanded off with some 100 grit sandpaper and some dust. And we're going to fill this hole with that. Take a drop of glue. Off through the excess. And that will fill that hole. We'll have to come back and have to be cut a little bit, this little section of this slot and thread and go back in there. It has to take a little while to dry. We'll come back with that thread in. Okay, now I got that hole. It's dried. I sanded it down flush. We just got to take our little fret slotting saw here and we got to recut just this little section here. And then get our fret back in. Back there in there. You can see I've taped up some spots where I've been leveling some of these frets. A few high frets here. I've done some fret work over this before and it wasn't done very well. I didn't put that on video because fret work is enough of the subject for its own video. That's enough work there. So anytime I do a setup, I always check for a few high frets. So there's a couple of them. If it's really bad, I'll just go ahead and level the whole thing. This one just had a few spots there to touch out. You can see here, the hole is pretty much invisible. Let's put some linseed oil on it, darken this, will be even harder to see, and this fret will go over top of it. And no one will know that there's ever a hole there. Now I'm going to put this fret back in, and then we'll take this the rest of the way up, and just give these frets a little bit of polish. I did have to level a couple of them, and then we can get to actually setting up this guitar. We are safe to hammer this fret in because I know that the neck box comes out to about right here. These last 4 frets you want to either press in or glue in the yoke or have some way to support your body when you start hammering on it. You can easily go to the top hammering on this extension right here. Alright, so we got it cleaned up. I took time to polish it. Put some linseed oil, mission fret on the bridge. We're going to put strings on this thing so the action fits. Usually when you do a neck reset, you're going to have to replace the saddle. Usually the saddle has been shaved down repeatedly to get the action lower if they couldn't no more. There's a decent amount of saddle sticking up, so I'm going to put strings on it with this saddle, original saddle as it is, and just see where the action sits. If it's too low, add some blanks and some higher saddles I can fit to this. We're going to try to see where it goes with this original saddle first. Okay, we got strings on this thing, and as expected, usually is, strings are a little bit too low now. We got the angle we want. This saddle has been trimmed down to account for the change of the guitar over time. So we're going to have to replace this saddle. Normally you do. I thought we might end up sticking out. I didn't have to with this one. It is a little bit too low. I usually measure the string height by the height of the string at the 12th fret. And for a Martin, I normally like to go about 4 or 5 64ths of an inch on the high E string, and about 6 or 7 on the low E string. And this whole thing is the back 2 or 3 64ths of an inch too low all the way across. And believe it or not, there's only a couple spots that does it at that low. It's got a good straight neck. So we're going to make the new saddle. It's just a touch higher than the one that's on. We're going to go ahead and take all these strings back off, loosely, pick this saddle out, and we'll make some new one. After going through all of my little pieces of bone in the saddle, I believe we may have one I won't have to make a whole new saddle from scratch. I have a Martin saddle here that appears to be just the right height. I did my math correctly. It is a Martin saddle, the radius is correct. I'm not even sure if this is the original saddle and this is the radius is a little funky. So we're going to try this one first. If that doesn't work, have a nice blank piece of bone. Just fabricate a whole new saddle from it. I thought about doing it anyway just to show you all that, but you know, making a new saddle is kind of its own thing, kind of like the fretwork. It really deserves a video unto itself. So we're going to try this saddle here first. It doesn't quite fit in there. It's a little bit thick. So we're going to have to sand this down just a little bit to get it to go in there. Okay, here we have our new saddle in place. Height ended up perfect. Just had to level the bottom of it and sand the sides a little bit just to get it to fit in this slot, but it's perfect. Intonation is right. No signs of a neck reset. Don't see the hole. Good and flush here. Don't see any gap. Still got to put the strap button back in, but and this guitar is ready to go. It should be good for another 50 plus years. Well, that pretty much does it for this video and this series. This guitar is pretty much ready to go, and it should be good for another 50 years of playing. Neck resets is just a fact of life with these old guitars. Every guitar is going to need it eventually, but if done right, you can't tell it's been done, and it makes it, like I said, good for another 50 years. Got a nice low action. Can't see any gap around that heel. You can't see any sign right here where the hole was drilled. And we got our nice new pick guard on there. And this thing's sweet. There's a reason these really old Martins are sought after. They got something that the newer ones don't have. Hope you enjoyed that. Well, make sure you like and subscribe, and so you won't miss the next video I put up, whatever next weird project I take on. David at Carolina Luthi. Thank you for watching. I like this thing.